How good was your childhood? Really? Most men will call it trauma because they can pinpoint a specific thing that was traumatic. But I have a test that can help you find out if some of your symptoms today, like overthinking, shutting down, not feeling good enough, imposter syndrome, anger, started somewhere. So if you can't pinpoint trauma in your childhood, there's something called the stages of psychosocial development. That's what an optimum childhood should look like. How does your childhood compare? Follow along and see if you notice unexpected trauma. Here we go. My name is Dr. Gregory Donihoo, and this is Zen for Men. Men's mental health put into action. Real, practical change. I'm using Erikson's stages of psychosocial development. Most people have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is more of an independent version of health. At the bottom, you have your physical needs, then it goes to shelter needs, then it goes to emotional needs. Who am I, and can I get where I want to go in life? That is all an individual direction, but the stages of psychosocial development is more about how we relate to the world and other people on an emotional attachment level. For those of you who are a fan of the attachment theories, what's your attachment style, anxious, preoccupied, secure, this is for you. This is a much more detailed breakdown of what should be happening at each stage of development in these big benchmarks and what parents should be doing during that time period. They're the ones responsible, and how that might impact you at each stage. At each stage of development, you can either go a good way or a bad way when it comes to healthy engagement with yourself and with the people around you. So let's dive into each stage. Stage 1, we have trust versus mistrust. This is developed between the age of 0 years old, so you're just born, and 18 months old, so a year and a half. Now, pay special attention if you're a father who has a child in this age, like I have a child in this age. First thing, trust versus mistrust. Basic message of this is, can I rely on the people in my life? Between the ages of newborn and 18 months, you're completely dependent on the people around you. If your needs aren't getting met, you have no power. You're completely dependent. It teaches you, can I trust this person or not? And it ends up expanding over, can I trust the world and can I not? So good examples of parenting during this time. You pick up the baby fairly quickly when they start crying. You make a lot of eye contact with the baby. Use soft tones. Quickly respond to feeding or diaper changes. Offer warmth and affectionate touch. The more touch, the better. Hold them as often as possible. Bad examples of this. I'm not speaking out of judgment. It's not to demonize. Every parent has a story. They have a history. They have their own trauma. This is not to demonize. This is to give facts of what tends to lead to healthy outcomes and doesn't. If this applies to your parents or you in particular, sometimes this is going to hit some truth. And I know there's uncomfortable truth in my life. It's not my goal to shame, but to point out what could be different. Other examples of poor parenting in this stage would be emotionally distant or distracted, especially if a parent is traumatized or younger and had a baby before they were ready. If they're distracted and spend a lot of time managing their own stress in life and aren't able to focus on the emotional needs of the child, this can create a problem of trust versus mistrust. Inconsistent attention to need is the next one. You love the baby, but other times you're distracted, especially if there's alcohol, drugs involved in the home. It's really easy for there to build that inconsistency. The last one is the avoidance of physical affection. I know for parents who are really stressed, it's easy to try to put the baby down, let the baby sit there. A lot of times baby will seem to be content. And in some cases, it's because they are no longer crying because they've given up on getting their needs met. It's important to push for physical attention. If you were a baby, an infant, that your parents gave more of the poor example in the trust versus mistrust stage, you might be experiencing hyper independence, where you feel like I can make it on my own. I don't really need to attach. I can have relationships designed to get me to the next stage of success, but I don't need anyone. I can do it myself. That could be one symptom. It could also lead to anxiety in relationships, hyperfixation on staying connected, expecting abandonment. If any of this starts to sound familiar to you, one of the easy tips to move through this phase, to go from mistrust into trust as an adult, is to practice little bits of trust. If you went towards mistrust because of parents' misdirection, it's good for you to practice tiny ways where you can offer trust or dependence on other people. Now, for those of us who have a hard time asking for help, that's what I'm talking about. Learning to be a little more vulnerable and learning to be supported by other people. It doesn't have to be big. It could be asking for a small favor, asking for just to meet together for coffee to talk about things. If you're a father and you have a child in this range, let's go over what's going to be the best. Respond to crying. Be present as much as you can. If you find yourself getting distracted, try to put up boundaries so that when you're with the baby, you are fully engaged, eye contact. Keep calm, a loving presence, so you become their sense of inner safety. Stage 2 of Erikson's stages of psychosocial development is autonomy versus shame and doubt. This is 1.5 to 3 years old. The main theme is, can I do things on my own? If you have a toddler, you can relate to the desire of a toddler to, I do it myself. So good parenting examples are encourage your child to, or if you were that age, you were encouraged to try tasks. Feeding yourself, dressing yourself. There was a lot of patience with potty training and trying that out, celebrating the effort of doing something and not necessarily the outcome, and offering safe choices. That last one is a big one for me because I had to realize that at a certain point, my child isn't capable of baby-proofing the area. So instead of setting up an area where it's, no, stop that, no, put that down, don't do that. Instead, it's my responsibility to create the environment where basically the child can do whatever they want and it's to be safe. Growing up, my world wasn't toddler safe. If they're going to head towards shame and doubt, it's going to be because there was lots of criticism or even mocked for making mistakes. Sometimes children, even at the age of 3 and under, are laughed at, shunned for being stupid, shame them for making accidents or a mess. The parents are controlling every decision the child makes at this point. That's going to head towards shame and doubt versus autonomy. Parents use sarcasm and humiliation when things go wrong. In childhood, as an adult, it would lead to a fear of failure. It would lead to a need for control in the environment to make yourself feel safe. You don't trust people. You just have to control the outcome, try to predict it. There's a lot of shame in asking for help. This is carried over from the previous stage. It gets worse here because there's this idea that I should already know how to do things, or why would people make fun of me for trying? There's a fear of taking initiative here, which then leads into the next stage, which I'll get into in a second. So what do you do? If you had a childhood really hit in that autonomy versus shame and doubt stage, 1.5 to 3 years old, start doing things that are fun, where if you mess up or make a mistake, that's part of it. It's a learning process. And everyone involved is on board. This is arts, certain sports. You can have some competition, but make sure it doesn't overpower into locker room talk where any mistake is pounded. There's some healthy versions of that, but for a lot of us, especially when our parents didn't encourage autonomy versus shame and doubt, this is a struggle, and we end up internalizing that shame. It's important, if you notice perfectionism in your life, to start practicing things where you are ready to make mistakes. Feel the failure, feel the frustration of things not going the way you intended. Revel in the learning process and start practicing the appreciation of that. Easier said than done, I know. If you're a dad and you have a child in this age range, I highly recommend that you let your toddler try as many new things as you can and give them choices. I noticed that I was doing this even when I was giving toys to my baby girl. She would pick up a toy, and a lot of toys have the correct way. Puzzles have the correct way to do things. And most toys have some function. I'm trying to let her explore, experiment, and find different ways to play with the toy that may not fit what I assume. Celebrate any attempt, not just the result. Stage 3 is initiative versus guilt. And this is stage 3 of Erikson's stages of psychosocial development. Stage number 3. Initiative versus guilt. This is from age 3 to 6, all the way to first grade. So 3 years old to first grade. The main concept, is it okay for me to act on my ideas? Good parenting will encourage a child to have pretend play and imagination games. They will welcome big questions. This is the stage of why, what if. A good parent will support child-led ideas, even if off the beaten path or inconvenient. Encourage ideas and encourage them to act on it and even support them in acting on it as much as possible. And then lastly, a good parent, especially in this stage, will validate big emotions, frustration, temper tantrums. Now, it doesn't mean you have to approve of the behaviors. You can still do harm reduction and make sure they don't hurt themselves or others. But validate what they're feeling. because they're feeling it in a big way. That's a mirror of what we feel later in life. Validate the feelings so they can learn constructive ways to deal with it because they feel like someone does care and it's okay for them to feel that way. That's all good parenting techniques. So let's talk about those of us who didn't have the greatest of parents. Poor parenting strategies at this time, 3 to 6 years old, is they will mock imagination as being unrealistic, or that's stupid, or nothing would be like that, or that shouldn't have wings on it, stuff like that. They will shut down curiosity. Anytime that there is a why question, they'll be like, because I said so, or they'll make fun of you or trick you to get you to stop asking. The next one is that general question of stop asking questions, or no more questions right now. If you overall blanket questions are bad, that eventually heads towards guilt rather than a child feeling like they can take initiative and act on their ideas. And the last troublesome parenting technique for this stage is punishing them for being too loud and too bold. It's up to the parent to create environments where it's appropriate. Instead of punishing, you redirect and guide them. Hey, let's be loud over here, or we're going to try to be quiet and focus on this instead. Focus on the good thing is to do and direct it rather than trying to shut it down. Encourage initiative. As an adult, if our parents had more of the poor parenting styles in this direction during 3 to 6, we might see guilt about ambition or desires, that we need to put others first or put others' ambitions or emotions, support them, rather than feeling like we can pursue our own dreams, desires. We might also feel an intense amount of people pleasing or to align ourselves with what other people think is a good thing to do. And we will try to always imagine what other people want or need in life and how do I match them rather than feeling tuned in with our own creativity. And then, of course, difficulty taking initiative. This is where we get a lot of guys that are stuck in the overthinking, underdoing. They don't actually feel the drive and motivation or freedom to take a risk. It's, no, I'm not sure, or maybe I need to think of something, and there will be procrastination, delay. Everyone's telling them, man, you should try this, you should do this. And there is this deep sense of fear and hesitation from this stage, 3 to 6 years old, initiative versus guilt. So advice for healing in this stage. This is where therapy is going to come in as an adult because you need people in your life, either from a group or therapy, a book, reconnect with your inner dreamer, the part of you that just has wild ideas and just thinks through things. Let yourself be creative, imaginative, and even silly. Learning to dance again, be improv, like go to an improv class, be spontaneous and draw from that creative place within you. It's also taking the lead on small conversations. Find a few things in your life that you find interesting, that you think would make you interesting to other people, that you can talk about, something you can craft, make, create, build, grow, something, and then talk about that with other people. If you're a father in this stage of a child from 3 to 6, have a whole lot of, hey, show me more. That's interesting. Let them direct playtime. Giving them the chance to lead and being interested will give them so much more confidence later in life, especially as the next phase begins. Let's go to the next stage. Stage number 4, industry versus inferiority. 6 to 12 years old. Really important times. The primary focus is, am I good at something? Can I be good at something? Where do I fit in with my peer groups? Am I better than them? You notice a ton of competition and comparison at this age. They will praise effort and growth points rather than outcomes. Good parents will also encourage practicing and trying new things and going through the frustration to see if there is improvement if the child deems that thing worthy. A parent will also support hobbies and interests to see if they can, because of their own natural drive, go further in different things. Good parents will also avoid comparing to others because it's already an instinct within the child. It's so important that the parent focuses on, what are you doing? What are you interested in? How do you compare with yourself? Poor parenting will only praise perfect outcomes. Only praise you if you get that A+, not the A, or you missed that spot when you did the yard work. They just say, I noticed you didn't do that. All of that kills this phase and heads a child towards feeling inferior. The next thing a parent could do that is a poor example in this stage is criticizing failure harshly. A lot of parents feel like failures themselves, so it's easy to project fear of, I need to make sure they have a harder work ethic and accomplish more. That destroys this stage. It kills the creativity and honestly kills the motivation. The other poor parenting thing is they will compare to siblings or peer. They will compare that child to other siblings or to their peers. Again, reinforces that same thing that's already so tempting at this stage. And lastly, a parent will have unrealistic expectations. As kids who grew up heading towards inferiority in this stage, they will develop in adulthood chronic imposter syndrome. They will feel like they have to hustle in order to even make bare minimum. And they will have all of their self-worth tied to productivity and outcomes rather than effort, creativity, and trying. So if any of this sounds familiar when heading towards inferiority instead of industry, detach the value from performance. This is easier said than done, but it has to be a daily rhythm to say the effort is more important than the outcome because that's all I can control. One of the methods I used in my own life is I try to set every goal as things that are 100% in my control. For instance, if I say I'm going to lose 15 pounds as a weight goal, I can't necessarily control that. There's medical things that are out of my range. Certain foods might affect me. I might get sick. I can't control that. But I can say I am going to walk 15 minutes, 3 days a week, and do 40 push-ups 3 days a week. I'm going to eat less. I can control the effort more than I can control the outcome. So all of my goals are effort-driven, and that's helped me a lot. Another thing that's important to heal here is I had to start asking myself, what would matter to me even if no one was watching? I was so set on meeting other people's expectations growing up that I had to start asking myself, if I was the only one here, what would I be doing? And that helped me find my interests and what would motivate me. Imagine I was alone and see what bubbled up and what would I be doing? As a father, if you have a kid in this age range, 6 to 12 years old, ask your kid about what they enjoy. Constantly inquire about not just what they're good at, but what do they find joy doing? That's where the motivation is. And then constantly give them praise for how hard they try to do things. Notice the things that they're naturally putting effort into and praise that effort and see what they're interested in and go in that direction. A kid is going to excel so much more when they already have that natural sense of, I already enjoy this. So push them towards that instead of what you think they should be going towards. This is the last stage I'm going into in the stages of social. This will be the last stage I'm going into because it covers 12 to 18 years old. There are stages after that, but I'm only focusing on childhood today. The last stage is identity versus role confusion. I know I've constantly had the question of who am I? Like, what is my identity? I had that question way into adulthood because something shifted between the ages of 12 and 18, likely before that, that caused me to go towards role confusion and using other people's expectations rather than having a solid sense of my own identity. If a parent is nailing it between the ages of 12 and 18, the primary question for a kid at this age is, who am I and where do I fit in society and my family? Good parenting will support questions and exploration. Not easy to do because some exploration can lead to harm, but support it. As many experiences as you can push towards and allow for. Do it. Even if there are consequences, it's better to learn it while they're this age than later. Allow for space for self-expression. Some self-expression is short-sighted and may seem odd, may even seem rude, but let them experience that, but also be open to conversation. Encourage independent thinking. Instead of answering the questions for them, say, what do you think? Give me a best guess for what you would do. And then we'll try it and see how it goes. I'm here to support you. That is important to encourage independent thinking while they're still young. Lastly, a parent nailing it will have emotional honesty. No manipulation, no hiding emotions, no outbursts. For most of us that didn't get it, we know what it was like to feel a lack of emotional honesty. This could even be parents that are very pragmatic. They're still not expressing frustrations or love and affection. Many parents don't say, I love you or I'm proud of you. Those are things that they might feel, but they're not saying it. So parents that are killing it will have a ton and they will model emotional honesty. Poor parenting at this stage of identity versus role confusion, 12 to 18 years old, is going to look like forcing identity onto a child. So that's things like religion, a specific career path, certain beliefs, behaviors. That's going to destroy a sense of identity. Dismissing emotional expression or even mocking emotional expression. This would be when something like, oh, you're exaggerating or such a drama queen. Any kind you dismiss the strength, because let's be real, there's a lot of hormones at this time. They genuinely feel it. Bad parents will dismiss this, it causes damage. Another example of poor parenting would be demanding conformity. Do it my way, because this is how we run it in my house. Sound familiar? And the last poor example of parenting in this would be shutting down difficult conversations. If parents were going through a divorce, you don't have to worry about it, it's not your thing. Or if one of the parents are going through grief and they just don't want to talk about it, that can dampen the child's sense they can talk about grief or frustration because they learned from parents that's not okay. What this often leads to, if our parents didn't back us up in these ways, it can lead to people pleasing or rebellion. It leads to one of the two extremes. It's we either overly cling and identify with the people, or identity becomes non-conformity. Both is a form of desperately seeking for an identity. A lot of times there will be an identity crisis. We usually think of this as a midlife crisis. They haven't really been pursuing their identity in a healthy way. Most people don't even realize it until they're years into it. Why have I been doing all of this? That's identity crisis. There's the lack of self-direction. A lot of adults who grew up where the parents led them in this direction won't know where they're headed or won't even know the things that they like. Honestly, they're just making it from vacation to vacation, and they don't really seem like they're enjoying life, but they wouldn't know what they should be doing anyway. They're just chasing a paycheck and surviving. If you find yourself in this place, ask yourself, what do I believe in? Start deconstructing your childhood. What was I encouraged to believe, and do I really still believe that? Start setting boundaries around the things that you want to reflect who you are. Another great example is the funeral exercise from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Imagine your own funeral 5 years from now, and you're going to imagine a set of eulogies go through, and people speak about yourself, close family members, friends, colleagues. As each person comes up, write down what you would want them to say about you 5 years from now, what kind of person you were, memories they had. Write down as much detail as you can. From that, especially because you're dead, so you don't go beyond that. So it strips down what matters and what doesn't matter. You're going to find characteristics that you would want people to think of you as kind or generous or hardworking. Write those down. That's how I decision make. Those are the things I want to reflect in my life. So I can assess, what does my current life look like? And does it reflect those values that I would want at my funeral in 5 years? If you have a kid in this stage, this is tough. Encourage your child to challenge you and question things as often as possible. Hear them out, offer explanation, have a conversation, but respect their pushback as much as you can, because that is the point of this stage, for them to push against where they came from to see who they are. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be a punching bag. It does still require mutual respect. So you're teaching them how to push back in a way that is respected. Oftentimes, kids get belligerent because they feel belligerence from the parent. They feel overly controlled. If you offer respect and say, questioning is exactly what I'm going for, that can go a long way to getting respect in return as well. So that is the first 5 stages of Erikson's development. How did your childhood stack up? What memories of your mom or dad came to mind? What parenting style do you have now? Are you modeling good or bad? Again, it's no judgment. The point of this is not to judge our parents. It's to assess, do I have hidden wounds that are impacting my relationships today? Do I have landmines that are in my behavioral health that other people can see and experience, and I'm just trying to cover it up and run away from it? How I use this is I will identify the earliest stage where I noticed my parents weren't able to meet all of my needs in that particular time frame. Go to the earliest example, trust versus mistrust, identity versus role confusion, anywhere in between, autonomy versus shame and doubt. Find where you feel there was a neglect or damage. That's where you start healing. I use the internet or ChatGPT, and I will ask, okay, if my parents dropped the ball on autonomy versus shame and guilt, and I have symptoms as an adult, what are some ways that I can heal mentally and emotionally from childhood wounding? Find a therapist to talk about that stage of your life. If we've been living in that extended trauma from childhood, we have built an environment, like both social and our careers, that are reinforcing that problem. As we get healthier, we are going to have to make some uncomfortable changes. You don't have to rush to change anything, but if your life is not aligned with who you want to be, then acknowledge it first and start seeking some support. If this content has been helpful for you, the one thing I ask, and it really helps the algorithm, is to hit the subscribe button down below. so that more tools can get to the men who need it. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.